our Customer Academy webinar. We have Pat Haney presenting today Best Practices for Backing Up and Restoring Your CXE. Before I turn it over to Pat, just want to let you know real quick that we are recording this, and so we will make the recording available to you if you have coworkers who would like to review the material or if you happen to get interrupted during the session. And we also will have time for Q&A at the end. And so want to invite you to type in your questions. Go ahead and submit those at any time during the presentation, and we'll have those queued up. If you have it minimized, if you've gone full screen with the presentation, there's an orange arrow in the upper corner, and when you expand that, you'll see the question box toward the bottom. So we'll hope that there will be, of course, not too many questions because Pat will be covering the material in depth, but if anything comes up as you're viewing, go ahead and submit that to us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Pat.
Okay, welcome everybody for joining. Like we said, today is the backing up and restoring your CXE system and some best practices for that. Of course, let me get the stupid screen right. Here we go. All right, well, why back up? I mean, we have the technology today with redundant hard drives and redundant power supplies and stuff like that. Why do this at all? Well, basically to protect your system against losing the data if it fails or having it impaired if it gets corrupted in some way or some database. You also, typically, the beauty of CXE is it can be rolled into whatever policies and procedures and stuff like that you have in your IT infrastructure now. So I mean, it might just be a policy that this happens, but mostly it comes down to what's your appetite for risk, or what would be acceptable if there was a problem with the system. How long would you endure, or how long would you want it to be down before the system could come back up? So the CXE system makes this easy to do this, and there's 4 different flavors of backing up your CXE system. All of them can be used in combination, and they all have different benefits to them, and they all have different roles. The first, let's start with a fundamental here, because like I said before, the CXE system rolls into your IT infrastructure in your enterprise right now. It is a Windows server running a selection of services on the Windows operating system. It can be part of a domain and live in that environment happy as all get out. Now, it doesn't even have to be hardware based. We can have a CXE system, the complete system, running on VMware, and starting with 8.7, we now support Microsoft Hyper-V. So the beauty of this is all the things that you can do pretty much within reason for a Windows server that is running a database, you can do with a CXE. Now, one of the things you have to remember, though, is the CXE system, although it is a Windows server and it is running a database, that database is active 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it is constantly open. So there are some challenges with that and some things you need to be aware about or aware of when you go to do your backups and restores. So the first thing, like I said, this system fits in your normal IT environment, and it's compatible with any kind of third-party backup agent that you choose to use, like Backup, Tivoli, Commvault, something like that. It fits right into if you have an enterprise backup solution where you're backing up your Windows servers, putting that information on a storage network, having that data go off-site, using a dedicated network, of course, to do all this stuff. And what that does is that's going to back up your static data. You have the operating system, the applications that are on the machine, and its configurations. This also includes, I didn't list it here, but if you are using a VMware or a Hyper-V, this also includes something called a system snapshot, where you can take an image of the system at this particular date and time in order to roll the system back if there's some sort of problem. So what you can capture, there's a lot of services that run with the CXE system that are on their own server or own service. They get configured one time and they're working, and then you leave them alone. And the third-party backups are really good for these two. Web Phone Manager and CX Mobile Services are probably 2 of the most popular, they're running on an IIS web server or running on a Linux-based one, but right now we'll concentrate on the Windows. They can be backed up like any other web server that you have. Integrating client access, that is our client-based unified messaging. It's a connector software. Same thing. It's just an application that runs on the system. You configure it for the first time, and it doesn't have any other configuration, doesn't have any data that it needs. The digital networking master does have data, but it also has static backups too that are taken care of, like we'll see in a bit. And of course, the Dialogic Acculab drivers, if you have those on call servers, your never fail configuration, your EC Connect scripts and stuff like that. All that is perfectly fine for a third-party backup. The problem with backing up the entire CXE is you need to exclude where the MySQL database exists, which is in the CXDB folder. That, like I said, is an active database. It never has the tables closed for any amount of time, at least all at once, in order to do a third-party backup. Same thing with Neverfail. If you're using Neverfail, it has a working folder where it's keeping its configuration and log and stuff like that, and it's an active thing. So that needs to be considered also when you're doing your backup. So the solution for this, oddly enough, happens automatically every day in a process called daily maintenance. Daily maintenance runs a number of things. First thing it does is it does its database and its file cleanups. Basically anything that is supposed to be purged will be purged during a daily maintenance routine. It will refresh your message waiting lights if you've configured it to do so. Not all PBXs require this. Most do not. But if you have one, for whatever reason, you can tell the system to go out and make sure everybody's status is correct. It will take a local system backup every day and put it in the CX backup folder. And this happens not only on the system server, but it happens on call servers. We're going to take a peek at that in a little bit. If you've configured an online backup, it will do a full backup on a network location or another drive if you so configured that as well. We're going to look at that next. And then there's a batch file, which doesn't exist by default. It's called dailymaintuser.bat. This is just a simple Windows batch file that you can have a number of different commands. You can literally have it do anything you want to do at that time. So after the system finishes its normal maintenance, it looks to see if this file exists. If it does, it runs it, and it does whatever it is said or whatever you told it to do in there. And that can be file copies. It can be an archive utility, which we'll see in a bit. It could be a notification to tell you I'm done my daily maintenance if you want. However, that notification or all the files or all the statuses that happen during daily maintenance, everything it does is logged in the event log under the applications folder as well. So what happens at a regular daily maintenance is you'll see a zip file show up. And I actually have one of these on my, my server here. So under the CX folder, you'll see a folder called backup. And then you'll see a number of different zip files here, one per day, pretty much. And in those files, you'll see a number of different things. Your license, you will see some backup configurations, phrase templates, configuration, and stuff like that. But there's something actually missing here, and it kind of stands out by its absence. And that would be speech. In the CX file structure, there's a folder called speech, which you'll see right here. Now, speech contains everything that has to do with speech. Your announcements, your availability announcements, your greetings, your names, your messages, and stuff like that. The messages are if you have a local store. You need this file intact if you're going, or this folder rather, intact if you're going to do a full backup. So the configurations for this are found on each server, both call servers and the system server, in the daily maintenance tab. And what you're looking at here is the brand new shiny 8.7 SU1. It came out like 2 weeks ago, and which is why if you're used to looking at this utility, it's going to look a little bit different than maybe your CX does. So let's take a peek at it live. Over here in the daily maintenance tab, you'll see all the settings for daily maintenance. And first off, starting with the time that you want daily maintenance to happen. And this is only for this server. If you go to the administration utility under configuration system environment, you'll see a drop down for all the servers in the system and a time to perform daily maintenance. You'll also see the message retention and report retention settings here as well that you can change without having to access the actual server. So you have a time here, and you have the number of days worth of files that you want to keep for your daily backup. I have mine set at 7, diagnostic logs 2 weeks, and speech utterances 8 days, something like that. One of the things, if you have speech, that's kind of interesting about a CX, it will record stuff it doesn't understand. And so if you're having trouble with your speech automated attendant, you can go back and look for these files. They're called UTT something, usually a number, .wave. It will record these so you can go back and listen to what somebody said that the system had trouble with. It's kind of a troubleshooting tool. But if you have this thing running all the time, that can actually be a substantial amount of voice files. So basically, with the amount of retention you want to keep, it's how much of a backup do you feel safe with. A week is actually a quite good backup. So there's a process to restore the system if you have a problem or if you want to restore it. Like I said before, if you want the speech to be restored, you're going to have to put that back manually. Now that can be put back from a third-party backup. So when you do that third-party backup, right, it didn't do the database folder. So you restore from that third-party backup. It'll put that CX speech folder back in. Then you can do the daily maintenance restore, and then that will put the pointers and everything back to the speech directory. And at that point, you'll probably have to resync or restore your call servers. Now, there's another type of backup that also happens with daily maintenance if you set it up, called online backup. What that does is a total backup. It does its normal daily maintenance backup, and it does an incremental backup of recordings. So the first time you do this, so the first time you set it up, it's going to create a folder structure here. You're going to see 3 folders: backup, reports, and speech. And then after maintenance, it's going to back up to this folder, put the files over there, put your report data over there, and then put your speech or any messages or incremental backup of the recordings that were in the system. So this can be, typically it's a network drive. It can be another drive in your machine. The system will not let you, typically it's not going to let you put that on the same drive as the CX is installed for obvious reasons. I mean, you want to have a protected backup here, and putting it somewhere on the same hard drive is not really protected. So let's take another peek at this. Now, one of the things you'll notice if you don't have an online backup, of course, you'll see this field here completely blank, and you'll see probably online backup. One of these things will be red. I forget which one it is. But it will tell you, hey, this is a problem. You'll also see the complete backup grayed out, meaning that if you do a daily maintenance backup, if you force it, you're not going to get all the messages, and that's what it's telling you. So you'll see this here. You put in a shared folder location in that kind of // notation. And for the newer system, you'll see this bar that you see right here, which is kind of cool. This is new in 8.7 SU1. And what it's doing is it's kind of incrementally backup throughout the day. It will also do it at daily maintenance, but it also will do it as it sees fit or as it has time during the day. And this is to save time during the daily maintenance routine. And it's actually kind of neat. I don't have any messages here, so really you just see a blue bar that says 100%. But you can press show details and it'll show you what's pending, what has to be done, and that kind of thing. And you can see a status of where your system is when it comes to doing your backups offline, or online rather. So just like with the daily maintenance, we have an online backup retention here. How many days for report data, how many days of backup do we want to have on our remote or our online folder, and do we want to include messages, greetings, names, system voice, and stuff like that, which is typically, that's the point of doing online backup, so you'd want to keep those. Now, one of the things you have to remember here, in order to do this, the file manager service account will have to have permissions to read, write in whatever folder that you are selecting. The file manager service is the service we use to be able to facilitate communications between CX, actually between CX servers is one of its roles, and then CX and anything else that you want to have the CX copy to. So that's needs to be set up in services for this to work. Also, online backups, you have to remember, you have your system backup, you have your system voice, which is names, greetings, announcements, stuff like that, plus your messages. And then you have the multiplier, which is how many days of these files do you want. So you'll have your first backup, it'll be a certain number, a couple of gig, and then times 7 days here is times that many gig. Now, it's a good idea to know this. In today's environment, disk space is extraordinarily cheap. As a matter of fact, the location that I have mine being backed up to has 2 terabytes, and it cost me like $300. It's a network storage network device. So you can back up a whole lot of data really simple. You just set it up the first time, let it run every day, and then you're pretty much protected. So typically you're going to use this when you've replaced a server or you're reinstalling the CX software, rather than just I've restored it from my third-party backup. This will actually reinstall it from the get-go. This will also put the system back to the exact date and time that record or that backup was run. So there's 2 ways to do this. One is during the CX setup. As you're installing the CX software, at some point you're going to see a screen and it's going to say, what is this, a new installation or restore from backup? So you'll see something like this, recovery, and that'll be your choice. Once you do that, it's going to ask you for that zip file or the backup location. You go to that location and the system will then do a recovery from the backup that you have. Now this will also work to some extent, well, actually it won't on the regular daily maintenance one. It won't put your messages back. So it will from the online backup. The other way is in our maintenance tab. Let me shut the system down so we can take a look at it. By the way, this is happening on call servers and it's happening on system servers. One of the kind of cool tricks of the trade here is that since the call servers and the system servers already kind of communicate, you can actually copy stuff back and forth to them on separate drives. I think I did this in the last webinar and was surprised how long it took. Okay. Under the daily maintenance, under the database tab, you'll see 2 things here, reinitialize and recover. Recover is to restore from that daily backup. It will, that you've already pretty much have the system back up, but you need to resync the pointers. Remember, speech files are in the speech directory. What is in the database is the pointers. So if you don't do this kind of restore, you're going to have what are called orphaned speech files. The system, they will be there in that directory, but the system will have no way to understand what they are and how to go get them. Reinitialize, you press that, and that is going to wipe out your CX server. It's going to do a bunch of stuff beyond your control. You can't say cancel. It will ask you I think, if you really want to do this. And then once you do, you're pretty much powerless. You just watch it do its thing. And then it will come up with the screen that you see here eventually and says, now what do you want me to do with this? Now that I've initialized the database, what do you want it to happen now? Restore it or create the system new? This is actually not something to play with just to see if you can do it too, by the way, because on a system, on a fairly large system, you're talking about a pretty good long process, a couple hours, if you have a ton of stuff in the message store. However, the cool thing about it is, and this is kind of a trick, these backups are pretty much compatible with one another. And this is how you actually move to new hardware, or how we would do a migration to a new platform, is basically a backup and restore over to the new one. Now, when you do this, if you happen to have like a lab setup, if you're fortunate enough to have multiple CXEs, one for production, one for testing, you want to make sure that your system, your lab system, is isolated from the production network. And the reason I say this is DNS, if it's on the same network, when you go to do things on your lab network, like say you restore a call server, you remove a call server from a system to add a new one or something like that, the system, it doesn't know that this is a test system, so to speak. So it's going to go out to the name of that server, whatever name you put in it, and it's going to go remove it. So it may remove a production server. So you want to isolate your production and lab stuff. The CX system, by the way, is very DNS sensitive. So when you have a name or an address out of place, it doesn't do necessarily what you expect it to do. As a matter of fact, it'll emulate other kind of problems. And it'll cause all kind of misery if you're trying to connect, say, even with the administration utility, it will mess things up for you. So there are some limitations to this kind of backup, and they are pretty much all those static configurations that we saw in the third-party backup. Those are the limitations of the online backup. It doesn't keep any of the Dialogic software or drivers, any of the Acculab software or drivers. It doesn't restore never fail. The digital networking software and the master, same thing. Integrated client access, all these are separate programs that are used within the CX system to power different services. So, and those are not backed up. Only the database and the actual configuration and the messages are backed up this way. It also is an all or nothing thing. The system has to be down, and you put it back the way it was from that date. You can't select this or that thing to put in for a restore and then expect it to work. So for the solution to that, we have a tool called Mailbox Archive. And all this does is basically back up your mailboxes and everything that has to do with the mailbox. And it complements our existing daily maintenance type backups in that you can put things back piece by piece by piece rather than have to do an all or nothing type of thing. It's got a really easy to use interface, and it also runs at least the backup part of it from a command line. It will do a full backup with messages, names, greetings for your mailboxes, but it does have a limitation of 2 gigabytes. So this is basically what it looks like. Let me grab this again because this is too easy not to show. So I have it here on a shortcut on my server. This only runs on the system server, by the way, not the call servers. You will generally find it in Desktop Archive. And you can see this is a highly complicated utility here. We have backup and restore. We have file, backup, and restore. And you can pick what kind of log detail you want to have during this during the backup. Brief, standard, verbose. Verbose will show you all the files that were backed up. So to back up, you just simply press the backup button or file backup. Pick a backup name, and then you'll see the box come up with what you want to back up. So I can select everything and back up all the mailboxes, include messages or not, include administrators or not, or I can pick whole classes of mailboxes. I can go all my call processors. Say I'm going to do a change, and I want to back up my processor mailboxes before I change my automated attendant, because then if I make a mistake, I can put that processor back the exact way it was before I touched it, and I can do this with the system running. Backup and restore doesn't cause any system downtime whatsoever. So I can say all processors. I can say just me. I can pick, like I said, whole classes or just me or just one mailbox, two mailboxes. There's also a check mark here that says enforce dependencies. And as you hover over each different mailbox, it'll highlight the dependencies. Like this particular one has another, this one has an announcement mailbox and a go-to action. Most of them have an exit. There's multiple mailboxes here involved in these mailboxes. And the same thing with distribution lists. So enforce dependencies, what that does is, if I back up, if I say, hey, I'm going to back up my main menu here, it's going to back up all the different mailboxes that have an association with that mailbox so that you have a complete picture when you go to restore, rather than just restoring a mailbox that may or may not have those associations involved or be able to find those associations. So when you're happy with that, I'm just going to do a full one because I really don't have anything going. I really don't have anything going on this system. Press it. It does its backup. It tells you how many files it did, how many mailboxes. You can see my system's tiny, so it took like no time at all to do it. And if you wanted to do a restore, it's the exact same process backwards. You select restore, select your files, and it can do the same thing. I can say, okay, I just want to put my one call processor back or my one subscriber back or something like that. Then I can say include my administrators on a restore, include the messages. If I'm including messages, do I want to overwrite what's there? Do I want to preserve what's there already? Say they have messages that they need to get back somehow. You have them in an archive. You tell it to overwrite the existing mailbox but preserve the existing recordings, and it will only put the recordings that are new or different that need to be restored to a mailbox. It's a really easy utility to use, and it comes in a command line flavor. So, and don't worry about this screen. At the very end, we're going to tell you where to find this information. We have online books that can show you how to do this, but it is in the CXBin directory. You can put these command lines in your dailymaintUser.bat file, and the program is called at_archive.exe. So you execute this with a number of switches, whether to back up, what to back up, so you can kind of overcome that 2 gig mailbox limitation by separating the types of mailboxes that you're backing up, the type of data you're backing up into separate archives. So, and this looks a lot more daunting than it really is. The easy way, because I can never remember any of this myself, is to go to CXBin, usually in your D drive. You have to get some command line chops in order to do this. at_archive /?. That's the help. You do that, it will give you examples, and it will give you what these actual switches that are available for you to use. I typically just do /backup, my archive file, log file, and then all. I just do a big backup because, you know, you got to have a really large CX system to have it concern about a 2 gig storage location. So what mine looks like, CXBin dailymaintUser.bat. So what I have here is I'm just going to the directory, I'm executing the backup, I've told it to go to archive %date%, which is going to give me a new name every day, and then I have a log file, and then I want all my mailboxes backed up. Now, I am backing up here to the same drive as the CX system. You could pick another one if you wanted to. But remember, if you're using a third-party backup, then you can go snatch the stuff away or snatch these archives off of the CX system when you do that kind of backup. You can also do the archive and then in the same batch file do an Xcopy, grab the files, and send them off to a network drive or something like that as well. Remember, this is a batch file. It just executes the same commands that you could execute on the server itself. So you see what I have here for the days I had it running. Every day I have an archive, and these will overwrite each other. So I will have 7 days of archives and 7 days of logs, and these logs are full. So they're telling me, you know, all the recordings, all the greetings, all the files that were recorded when this archive happened. So it's literally this is one of those things that you set up that one time and then just let it go do its job. So you cannot, however, do a restore using your command line. You can do it for the backup, but not the restore. The restore, you actually have to use the GUI utility. So for this to work, your CX must be fully installed and running. Your unified messaging profiles, if you have them, must be already there. And they must match what's in the archive. Same thing with your switch sections. We didn't really get into what those are, but those are the settings. You build settings for your integration, for your PBX. Each one of the mailboxes has those in its devices. And when you go to restore, it wants to see those same PBX integrations exist. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem. It doesn't affect service. Like I said, you can do this backup and restore with the system running. However, like I said before, on a really large system, the larger the system, the more time this is going to take. So while it's not service affecting, expect a couple hours per gigabyte for this utility. And the idea here is this tool is used to put mailboxes back or recover lost mailboxes and stuff like that on the system that the archive was taking from. Same database version or same version of CX, same mailbox length and stuff like that. In order to use it, the archive, you have to be putting the mailbox back from the exact same system that it came. So when you do an upgrade, obviously one of the first things you want to do is do an archive as well, because you will have a period of time there if you don't have an archive where you'll have to recover by restoring the older software, doing your mailbox restore, and then doing an upgrade again. So like I said, it's very sensitive to the system version and the other settings in the system itself. So the best thing to do here, best practices. Basically, you should be doing some sort of backup. If you have a third-party one in place, you should be doing that. At very least, you should be doing your maintenance, and, well, maintenance is happening anyways. Online backup should be happening every day. This is something you set up that one time, and then your data is there to use. Now, if I'm copying the data off, especially if I have an enterprise backup, you want to start daily maintenance 30 minutes at least before you start your enterprise backup, because remember, you want to get the most current data. The most current data is going to be available for backup after daily maintenance. So you want to do that, then do your third-party backup if you're having a third-party backup. I would also put in the archive running in the batch file to the local drive. I'd have that. Remember, that's going to happen at daily maintenance. So then when you do a third-party backup, you'll have all that data as well. Safe, so if you need it. And I can think of at least one time, speaking of archives not being the right, either not being there or not being the right software. I had a customer a long time ago that you know, they had one of the biggest CXs. There was a Call Express at the time. It was an older system. They didn't do any backups, and sure enough, the fancy RAID drive that was in the machine failed. That meant an all-weekend ordeal to get it up and running. It took all night just to get it up and running to where it would, the automated attendant would answer again. And the only mailboxes they had to retrieve from was from their lab system, which was a different release. So this meant reinstalling the old release, doing a restore, doing an upgrade, then doing a backup again. They're doing a restore, a backup again, so that one would be halfway current should the drive not be able to be fixed. Eventually, it got all back running again, and then not 1 year later, 2 years later, they had another hardware failure and still had not done backups. And this is a 24/7 like call center operation that was answering, they're fronting their business with it and had no backups. So it was down for a good long time, and it could have been back up within an hour or two if they had the proper backups in place. Especially today, if you're using like VMware or something like that, you have a clone of the machine and you have your online backups. It should be astonishingly quick to get this thing back and running if you need to. So what you should do, another thing to do, is document how the backups are happening, what's backed up, where it's backed up, who knows how to put the system back, all that kind of thing, so that when an event happens, you know how to handle it. Another kind of cool tip is put in the installation media wherever your backups are stored. We actually, the Pro Services Department will copy the software for the CX onto the CX. Like all the system stuff we use will be found in a folder on the CX system. And the reason we do this is twofold. One is if you are reinstalling or installing software for a CX system, the DVD we give you is about 8 gig. And DVDs are a lot slower to install from than a hard drive. So for an hour or less invested in copying the software up to the system, you gain back in your installation process, which happens very, very quickly when the software is already there. The second thing is, if you ever need that software again to do whatever, even if you say had to fix your operating system and then go back and restore CX or reinstall it, the software's there. You don't have to run around trying to find out where the DVDs last were seen. If you have a hardware feature key or even the credentials for the software license, it's a good idea to put that up there too somewhere, so you can get the system running in a hurry and not have to scramble trying to find things. And the next thing is to do an audit of some type, annual at worst, but probably every week to a month. I'd examine as a manager to make sure that I have the backups I think I have, and that I have the current ones, and that the current contact list is also valid as well. So that way, if you have to restore, you don't have any kind of problems having it done very quickly. So the backup is different from archive. One thing, the messages that are not created and deleted in the same day are not captured at all. And there is no way to find them once, if you have them in the folder. So you'll see the messages in your speech folder, and they are 17-digit WAV files, and there is no identification whatsoever to what those are. So there's really not a good way that you can run through that folder and find out what it is. So you can, however, we do have a thing called archive that you can archive the messages as the system's running. We use Symantec Enterprise Vault, and it will create a copy of all the messages in an archive. That's a kind of a separate type application. Now that being said, I think 8.7 SU1 changed this a little bit, as the messages are going there from time to time during the day, rather. So, but you'll still have a lag. It's also not high availability. Backups will take you some time to put back in if the hardware has a failure. The more redundant or the more robust you make your hardware, remember this is a Windows server, so you can have a nice server with multiple hard drives, multiple NIC cards, fans, stuff like that. So you can make that as robust as you would like. We also offer Never Fail. Never Fail is our high availability solution. It allows you to have dual system servers, and actually you can have 3 of them, one of them for disaster recovery, and have more than one call server. Call servers operate regardless of whether the system server is running or not. It will cache the messages that they receive. You won't be able to receive them until the system server is running again, but they will run independently. So you should always have at least one more call server than you think you will need. That way the call servers will never fail to answer calls. And lastly, these other utilities, Web Phone Manager, Mobile, and ICA, they are just regular Windows applications. The Web Phone Manager and Mobile are just websites, literally. There's nothing special about them. So ICA is an IMAP type connector for client-based unified messaging. All of these things will work on multiple servers if you have a load balancing scheme of some type to share the load between the webs, the servers themselves. You can have multiple web servers, multiple mobile servers, and ICA servers on a CX system. So they can be behind any other kind of balancing hardware or scheme that you would like to use. So the best practice here is to pick the 4 flavors, one of each, or however many that you feel comfortable with, to build a comprehensive solution, not really relying on one or the other. And of course, documenting and auditing how this all works so that everybody is aware if there's a failure, how to go back and put it together and make sure that you have what you need to make the system run again. So now we're pretty much ready for questions.
Okay, great. All right, there's a couple of questions in the queue. Once again, if you have been here and maybe you missed the instruction at the very beginning, if you have a question you haven't submitted, look for the question box. You may have it minimized. Use the orange arrow in the upper corner, and then you'll see the whole webinar panel there. So Pat, the first question, let's see. So how much of this content is specific to 8.7 of CXE?
Only the screen where you saw where it did incremental, where it was doing backing up data throughout the day. Basically this right here and the show details, that's the different part about 8.7 SU1. Everything else goes all the way back to, I want to say 8.1 or 2. I mean, way back.
Okay. Okay, good. Next question says, we have an 8.6 system with SIP integration. In order to provide the quality of service and voice priority on the data network, we have forced the DSCP tags on the switch port as the CX application is not able to perform. So then here's the question. We are concerned that the online backup will create too much tag data and overwhelm the voice queue on the data network. Is there a way to mitigate the amount of data from the backup process, or maybe direct the backup to the second NIC on the server?
Yeah, it's actually the other way around. You direct the voice to another NIC. So you will see somewhere in here, local IP address to bind on. If you have multiple NIC cards, it will do that, and that's telling your integration to work on a different NIC. And then all the other hardware, all the other management stuff is happening on the main NIC, whichever one is not handling the voice. So that's available on SIP.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. Next question, is Commvault supported as the third-party backup agent?
We support any third-party backup agent. The only thing you have to do is configure it so that it's not bothering the MySQL database. Other than that, any kind of Windows utility will work just fine.
Okay, great. All right, well, I'm going to see if anyone's still typing here because that looks like that is wrapping up the questions that I'm seeing. And Pat, I will also send out the 2 documents that we referenced on the prior session of this. So Pat, you mentioned those documents, I think, as well. So there we go.
They're right there.
The System Backup and Restore, right?
And Mailbox Archive Utility.
And, okay. Okay, so for those of you who would like to review those documents, when we send out the follow-up email to the webinar, which will also include the link to the recording, as soon as that's available, we'll provide the link to those documents as well for you to download. And if you have any follow-on questions, you can direct those to us at usergroup@avst.com. And of course, you know, questions that pertain to this session, any support related, we'll direct those back to the typical support group, whether it's your reseller or if you have a direct support model. If you're on Premium Express Care, obviously you can contact our support department. Pat, anything else to add before we wrap up?
I did forget that batch file. That's not service affecting either, generally. So if you wanted to create your mailbox archive to work on daily maintenance, you could create that batch file or create a different one, try it out, see if it works the way you want it to work, and then maybe rename it to dailymaintUser.bat and then just let it run. It's not going to hurt your system to do that while the system's running. Matter of fact, I think it's almost impossible.
All right, thanks so much, Pat, and thanks everyone again for joining us today. So you may have seen this in the email. I don't remember what detail we put in the invite, but we are going to be running these webinars quarterly, and we'll also make available some of the past ones we've done with the recording, so look for some additional emails on that. And we're always looking for your feedback as far as topics you'd like us to cover for these. So I think you'll get a survey pop up when the webinar window closes here. So feel free to provide that feedback to us, and we'll hopefully get some more topics that are of interest to you on these sessions. So thanks again, and have a great day, everyone.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.